Thank you and good morning. I may be speaking in a foreign language to many of you in the room, but please bear with me. And what I've done is I have posted a very comprehensive paper on the TIA webpage right above my picture. It's about 14 pages long. It has all the agenda items, all the resolutions, all the text that I will be covering. So if you're a member of the press, all the information is right there. All you have to do is cut and paste it, and it's all yours. So I'm just going to make some remarks to complement those, and hopefully they won't sound in a foreign language. So in essence, the paper covers four main radiocommunication principles: spectrum needs and requirements, primary or secondary allocation, including sharing within the bands and compatibility with adjacent bands. It talks about the evolving and dynamic role of standards and how it plays out. And finally, it discusses whether ITS radio communication service is considered a safety service or not. And let me be clear up front that it is not considered a safety service and does not enjoy the protection benefits that a safety of life service would enjoy. From a global perspective, ITS clearly provides a number of safety applications, but only a handful of telecommunication regulators around the world consider ITS as a radio communication service. In the United States, for example, one of the earliest petitions that this industry has done prior in the early 1990s is to designate ITS as a radio service under the Land Mobile Service, which is known as Part 90, Subpart M of the FCC rules. So in the United States, we do recognize it as a radio communication service, but we are only a handful of countries that have that recognition. With respect to the spectrum requirements and needs, exactly 20 years ago today, December 5th to 7, 1995 to be exact, the ITS America Telecommunications Committee met at ARINC in Annapolis, Maryland, to finalize the FCC petition for the 5.9 gigahertz band based on the MITRE study, which had identified the band 5850, 5925 as globally available in the mobile service and on a co-primary basis for dedicated short-range communication services. Well, incidentally, the TRB was snowed out that year. So if you remember, 1996, TRB didn't start till like Wednesday. So we may have a repeat. 20 years later, today, the original MITRE study is still relevant. The band 5850, 5925 was intentionally selected to piggyback on unlicensed RLAND or the UNII proceedings that were also underway at the same time. The main idea was to establish synergies between the two industries, to have economies of scale, and to figure out the deployment scenarios, at least from the infrastructure side. The idea was that certain non-safety ITS applications could be delivered via RLANs in the unlicensed band at 5.8, while the safety-related applications would benefit from the co-primary status of the allocation in the 5.9 gigahertz band. Today, or 20 years later, we cannot ignore this fact. We cannot ignore as to how or why this band was strategically selected to take advantage of the two synergies. Both industries, ITS and RLANs, can only succeed through collaboration between them. And the ultimate goal of this collaboration is to ensure deployment that delivers the services of both industries. Another goal should be a collaborative approach for the successful completion of the two agenda items for WRC 19 that I will discuss later. In this environment, and with both industries represented within TIA, TIA is in an excellent position to facilitate this collaboration while remaining technology neutral and without advocating for either side. Again, so please take a look at the paper. I have all this information there. So before I continue, I'd like to discuss a little bit about the output of the WRC. Just want to take a couple of moments to talk about the ITU. The ITU is a specialized UN agency dealing with information and communications technologies, and this year the ITU is celebrating its 150th anniversary. With respect to ITS and vehicular connectivity, the ITU ecosystem covers a broad range of activities. In addition to radio communication aspects and spectrum, the ITU also covers the vehicle gateway platform, the cybersecurity aspects of the vehicular network. It also covers the Internet of Things and smart sustainable cities and communities. In fact, on the radio side, we've been working on the Internet of Things without knowing that we're working on the Internet of Things. We simply call it wide area wireless sensor networks. So wide area wireless sensor networks is what today is being dealt with under Internet of Things. Many countries, especially developing countries, look to the ITU to develop their own telecommunications regulatory framework. Now, what is not known is that most of the ITU activities are not 3D based. Most of them are voluntary based and are non-binding on their member states. And many of these standardization activities, even related to ITS, have been ongoing for the past 20, 25 years within the ITU. And they have also directly involved TIA throughout those 20 years. On the non-treaty side of the ITU, TIA initiated the first study question on ITS back in 1995. This study question, commonly referred to as Question 205, is currently assigned to Working Party 5A dealing with the land mobile service, and this was started by TIA in 1995. Now, the same Working Party 5A will now be dealing with both the ITS and the RLAN agenda items in preparation for WRC 19. And you may wonder why 1995? That's because it coincided with the release of the ITS national architecture with its original 26 or 27 user services. So the first activity within the study question was to look at the radio communication aspects of those user services and to figure out the deployment scenarios from at least the infrastructure side. However, a small but extremely significant portion of the ITU is 3D based. And it's based on 3 3D instruments that are reviewed and revised every 4 years. One of those 3 3Ds is the World Radio Communications Conference. Both WRC 15, which just concluded on November 27, and WRC 19 pointed the way and set the agenda for technology innovations, including vehicle-to-vehicle communications that will define the next decade. They will serve to advance US technology and innovations at WRC 19. However, the WRC remains a bit rigid and will only address radio communication services at a 3D level. The radio regs cannot be expected to include applications and will never be expanded to include applications. It will only focus on radio communication services. So let's look at what we accomplished at WRC 15. First, WRC 15, as I said, which we wrapped up after 4 weeks on November 27, successfully concluded on the automotive radar, which was placed on the agenda by WRC 12. Under the automotive radar agenda, the ITU allocated the 77.5 to 78 gigahertz band to the radio location service, in order to allow for the operation of automotive radar throughout a 5 gigahertz contiguous band between 76 and 81 gigahertz. Vehicle-to-vehicle communications can also be used in this band if it involves a radar technology. This is a significant accomplishment on many aspects. First and foremost, it corrects a regulatory flaw, because today, collision avoidance radar continue to operate in several not harmonized secondary bands under a modified Part 15 rule for unlicensed applications and devices. What does it mean in English? In English, it means that your car radar today enjoys the same level of protection as this wireless microphone, your portable phone at home, or your garage door opener. All the car avoidance radars operate under Part 15 rules on a secondary basis, even in the FCC rules. So WRC-12 corrected that. WRC-12 not only allocated an additional 500 megahertz of spectrum to the radio location service to be used for automotive ground-based application, it also made the allocation on a co-primary basis. I should also point out that the main catalyst of this agenda item was distracted driving, including any ICT technology that can reduce the more than 1.25 million roadway fatalities per year, according to the UN data. Another catalyst are the figures that were presented earlier, such as the 80% reduction in roadway fatalities. Those were the catalysts that drove this huge success at WRC 15, and which was announced prior to the Road Safety Conference in Brazil. Now, due to the success of the automotive radar, WRC 15 was able to place about 3.5 agenda items that are related to ITS on the WRC 19 agenda. The first and foremost, and you will be working on this for the next 3 years, will be known as agenda item 1.12, which is to consider possible global or regional harmonized frequency bands to the maximum extent possible for the implementation of evolving ITS under existing mobile service allocations. The ITS agenda item does not seek and cannot seek a new or additional allocations for ITS applications in the mobile service. The objective is to simply to harmonize the spectrum for ITS applications either globally or regionally in the existing mobile service, with the possibility to identify the spectrum in the radio regs. There are no regulatory implications anticipated in this agenda item, and since the band is already allocated to the mobile service, sharing studies with other incumbent services would not be required. With DSRC at 5850, 5925, you are already co-primary using the mobile service. So you're already there. So all you need to worry about is to have some global harmonization. Now, on an interesting side note, this same agenda item, the same text, the same words of this agenda item was submitted by our friends in Canada at WRC 2000 for inclusion as an agenda item at WRC 2003. It did not get any support because it was deemed too premature by a vast majority of global telecom regulators, including the United States. The only difference, if you look through the text, and as I said, it's posted on the website, you see the resolution and stuff. The only difference between the 2015 and the 2000 text is the recognition of the LTE-based V2X services standard currently under deployment by 3GPP of course, in addition to the 802.11p standard. So the only difference is the addition of the LTE V2X based standard. Now, the second WRC 19 agenda item, which was a little bit much more difficult to get through. Just want to take a comment. The ITS agenda item, everybody loves ITS. Nobody in the world, it'll be un-American to hate ITS. So everybody in the world loves ITS. The next agenda item, it was a huge struggle to get it through, but it also went through. But it's also a very significant agenda item for ITS as well. The second WRC 19 agenda item is the RLAN agenda item, which is designated as agenda item 1.16, which is to consider issues related to wireless access systems, including RLANs, in the frequency bands between 5150 and 5925, and take the appropriate regulatory actions, including additional spectrum allocations to the mobile service. Now, unlike the ITS agenda item 1.16 on RLANs does have regulatory implications and requires several sharing studies, first in the 5150-5350 band, 5350-5470 band, 5725-5850 band, and finally 5850-5925, while ensuring the protection to existing incumbent services. We were lucky we just ended up with only these bands because our friends in Europe wanted to examine the entire 5 gigahertz band. They wanted to reband the entire 5 gigahertz band. We were lucky we walked out alive with this. Then the third WRC 19 agenda item deals with radio communication systems for trains, including the possibility for positive train control. It is also known as agenda item 1.11 with the following short title. Where is it? To take necessary actions as appropriate to facilitate global or regional harmonized frequency bands to support railway communication systems between train and trackside within existing mobile service allocations. While agenda item 1.11 on trains and 1.12 on ITS appear to be similar, and similar technologies such as DSRC can certainly be used for both, agenda item 1.11 does require a spectrum requirement study in order to commence with the sharing studies. And the last agenda item, which is designated as agenda item 9.1.6, will be looking at studies for wireless power transmission technologies, especially for electric vehicles. All three agenda items, agenda item 1.11 on trains, 1.12 on ITS, and 1.16 on RLANs, have been assigned, much to my pleasure, to ITU Working Party 5A to finalize all the necessary studies and ITU text in preparation for WRC 19. So the same working party will be and probably the same people will be dealing on all three issues in the same room. These studies will be ongoing over the next 3 years, 2016-2018, and should wrap up with the development of the regulatory text in 2019 in time for WRC 19. It is a very complex preparatory cycle which requires both technical and regulatory studies at the domestic level here in the US, at the regional level through the Organization of American States, and then finally at the global level at the IT. So let me conclude by saying, so what are the next steps in this whole picture? The first meeting of Working Party 5A in this cycle is scheduled to be held on May 9 to 20, 2016. During this cycle, 2016-2019, we could expect about 4 or 5 meetings of Working Party 5A to finalize all the documents. The successful conclusion of the automotive radar that we just finished back in November required quite a bit of resources and an excellent partnership between the equipment manufacturers and the telecom regulators. It also required a live demo at the ITU of the 79 gigahertz applications, including high-level discussions at the Fully Networked Car Workshop, which is held in conjunction with the Geneva Auto Show. Here in the United States, the FCC is the lead is the U.S. lead for the domestic preparations for Working Party 5A and will most likely kick off the preparatory process in late February or early March for the May meeting. Once again, TIA is in an excellent position to actively participate in the domestic preparations while also acting as a facilitator between the two sectors. Ultimately, the domestic preparatory process is contribution-driven, and contributions are widely solicited, including directly from the Department of Transportation or any other entities. And I will conclude by saying that these two agenda items, 1.12 and 1.16, will only succeed if there's collaboration between the ITS and the RLAND proponents. So as the domestic preparatory process will begin early March under the auspices of the FCC, the FCC's International Bureau, I would strongly encourage a dialogue between the proponents so that a collaboration framework can be established between now and early March as to how to proceed on these two agenda items. And most probably, TIA can provide the best umbrella or platform for this framework. So hopefully I spoke in English. Sometimes I don't understand what I'm talking about myself, but with these FCC rules, but that's all the issues that I have. Thanks.